What's going down, D-Gens? Back with the third video of the week. Really, truly breaking my back for you guys. What can I say? I love you. So, let's get right into it. This video is going to be prop plays. It is essentially going to be through price picks for the most part. However, some of these are individual plays. If you're not familiar with price picks usually offers reasonable to great lines for individual players. However, they require that you play at least two players, and they give you the option to play from 2 to 5. It's an app. It's legal in pretty much every state, which is why it's so popular. It's kind of like an offshoot of gambling that's just more acceptable, more accessible, I should say, across the country. That all being said, I don't really like parlays. If you've been listening to this channel for any amount of time, you probably know that. Teasers are probably about as close as I get to really giving out parlays, unless it's something really out of the ordinary. That being said, two players is not a huge ask. It's not like a six-way parlay. I would just say, if and when you do take these, take them kind of with a grain of salt. I would say probably I try to play two players at most. There is another site out there instead of Price Picks. It's Underdog, which a lot of you may be familiar with through fantasy. They kind of incentivize you to do more than two players at a time. You'll see there's a pick on here where I actually have 4 players, but I try to keep it all correlated, or I do keep it all correlated. And what I mean by that is, you don't want to take 4 players and just take them, but for the hell of it, because I like this guy and this guy and this guy. Because if they're on different teams and they're playing in different games, there's no correlation between what the Cardinals do today versus the Cowboys. I think one player is going to do really good on that team. And then the Giants versus the 49ers, well, I think the 49ers are going to have this kind of game plan. And then I think in this other one, in the Ravens-Colts game, I think that the Colts are going to have to do this. It's not to say that you cannot win like that, but you have to be right about 4 different games, 4 different game flows, 4 different players and coaches. To get that all on the same page is kind of difficult. So if you try to do just one game, because at minimum, again, you have to do at least 2 players. And at minimum, they make you do 2 players from 2 different teams. So you can't do like a true correlation or pure correlation, I guess, would be like, hey, I think that this receiver is going to go over so many yards, and I think his quarterback is going to go over his passing yards. Obviously, that's correlated, right? When you can't do one without the other, they don't let you do just that. You can do that. You can do quarterback over his yards, receiver over his yards, but you have to have a third piece in there from another team. And the way that I am asking you to do that is that third piece come from the opposing team. Like I said, if you get the game flow right and your prediction is right and your estimation of the game, regardless of whether you cover the spread or not, if your game flow estimate is right, you have a much higher chance of hitting on the individual players if you're kind of breaking it down mentally and saying, if this happens with this team, then Y is going to happen with the opponent. So, again, just the most, advantageous way to play that. So, let's get into the picks. I'll go over with you. In week 2, we actually did end up going 3-1. And, of course, the one that didn't hit was the 3-way parlay that we put out there. So anytime touchdown for Ramondre Stevenson, that hit. These are through books, or most of them were through books, except for like the parlay stuff. So Ramondre Stevenson and Saquon Barkley to both have anytime touchdowns. Individual plays or individual books, those both hit. Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown with Patrick Mahomes over 298.5 passing yards, that hit. Jalen Hurts to have over 1 rushing yard, which that is a bonus, and that is one thing you should look for when you're when you're looking into something like Prize Picks or Underdog. Usually they'll have at least one player that they give you as like a free square, and it'll say like Jalen Hurts over 1 yard, right? So just 1 yard, however he gets it, and it's just kind of your incentive to play. They give you a free square. A lot of people use that, and they immediately think, oh, let me put 5 players in here because I got one that's free. That's, like I said, not to do that. I just put 1-1. So we got, again, him partnered with the Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown. That paid 3-1, so that hit. The other 2-way parlay with the Hurts and Mahomes, that played 3-1, that hit. Saquon Barkley was minus money. I believe it was like minus 135 when I took it. Ramondre Stevenson was plus 120. The one that we lost, again, was a three-way parlay with Ramondre Stevenson over 50.5 yards. That hit. Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown. That hit. Calvin Ridley or Ingram just could not get a touchdown for us. And honestly, that was very close to cashing because Ridley had 2, if not 3 attempts to catch a touchdown, just couldn't keep his damn feet in the end zone. That one would have paid 6-1. Sadly, it does not cash. So break out the violin. That all being said, we end up obviously up for the day. What is it, 3-6? About 8-1, or 8 units, I should say, for the day. Week 2 on props. So week 3 again. Let's try to keep the train rolling here. I'll tell you that some of these are books, some of these are, again, through the apps. So for the sports book plays, anytime touchdown for Bijan Robinson, as well as in any over 48.5 yards for Zay Flowers. So those are 2 standalone plays that I have. All of these games are pretty much, or all of the plays, I should say, are basically coming from 2 games. One of them is kind of a standalone. It's not necessarily correlated, and that's Trevor Lawrence. We'll get into that one last. But all of the other ones are going to be either the Falcons-Lions game or the Ravens game. And that's pretty much it. So, again, anytime touchdown for Bijan is play number 1. Over 48.5 receiving yards for Zay Flowers is number 2. Second play here, this is going to be the 4-way one. And this is the one, like I said, if you wanted to break it down into just 2 players, I wouldn't hate you for it. The problem is, I only have 1 player from the Lions. The other 3 are from the Falcons. So I really couldn't play, again, you can't do 2 that are just Falcons players. So you have to have the 1. And I didn't want to do 3 different attempts to try to hit 1 parlay. So let me just do 4. Essentially, it's anytime touchdown Gibbs. So exactly what it sounds like. We just need Jamar Gibbs to hit a touchdown. Young Huku over 2 extra points. Desmond Ridder to run for over 13.5 yards, and then Bijan Robinson to go over 70.5 rushing yards. So, like I said, all of them from the same game. The expectation here is, like I said, I believe this is going to be a higher scoring game. I believe you are going to have several touchdowns scored on both sides of the ball. I think the final score in this one is probably like a 27-24 kind of game, regardless of who wins. If that is correct, then I'm expecting Koo to hit 3 extra points, regardless of which side of that total that they're on. Desmond Ridder over 13.5 rushing yards. Bijan Robinson, obviously, again, over his rushing yards total, just because I expect this to be a pretty good game for the Falcons' run game. Same thing with Gibbs. Now, Gibbs, I put anytime touchdown. Instead of going over his rushing yards or over his passing yards, I used anytime touchdown just because this is his first game without David Montgomery. So trying to decide how they're going to use him is a little difficult. They do have a backup there that is going to get some playing time. That doesn't mean that he's going to lose anything to him. But to say that he's going to get, 20 carries may be a bit much. I don't think the Lions want to use him that way. They don't want to bang him up, especially with Montgomery out for at least, 1 to 2 weeks. On the flip side of that, he's too good and too explosive to only use in the passing game. They're going to give him a few carries. What would really suck is if they give him 10 carries, he's like a yard under his yardage total, or if they only give him 2 to 3 passes and he, again, is like 1 to 5 yards under his receiving total. So instead, let's take the anytime touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown is also a little banged up. So if anything, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the number 1 go-to guy in the red zone for the Lions, because assuming that they get in close, which, again, I believe that they will several times, the odds of him being the go-to guy, especially if they want to run the ball in, which they should, is pretty high. He's going to most likely be their red zone running back. He should be the number 1 guy, at least get the first crack at the red zone running back. If, for whatever reason, he's not able to get in, if they're kind of putting the clamps down on the run game and they're making Detroit throw the ball, obviously he's a great catcher. He's still going to come out of the backfield. He's still a great option. He's still, at worst, the number 2 option in the red zone there, especially with St. Brown a little banged up. Either it's St. Brown first, or if you want to say the tight end is maybe first, he should be number 2. either way. So that's why we have the anytime touchdown for Gibbs. That one is, I believe, through Prize Picks. No, I apologize. That is through Underdog. Prize Picks is going to be Trevor Lawrence and Zay Flowers. So again, Zay Flowers over 48.5 yards. Trevor Lawrence over 251.5 yards. Very similar breakdown here, just in the game flows. And I'm speaking specifically to the Jaguars. This is a get-right game for them. Typically, the Texans don't give up too much to the quarterbacks. However, the Jaguars are still in search of their real, true potential blow-up game here. After last week, after not scoring a touchdown, after being kept out of the end zone, I fully expect these guys to just go balls to the wall, getting the yards, trying to get the touchdowns, making sure that they have that chip on their shoulder, that they know what they can do. Secondly, though, the Texans have a bottom 10 secondary. They've shown us time and time again that they are willing to give up big plays down the field. You may not get a touchdown on these guys, and that's the problem for Trevor Lawrence if you're playing him in fantasy. He may not have a touchdown, and that's usually why they don't have great numbers against the Texans, is because if you get 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns against these guys and you're up 14 or 17-0, and the Texans don't really mount a comeback, well, you don't really have to throw a whole lot. And every time you get to the red zone, it may be just as easy to hand the ball off to ETN and let him get in there. So I didn't like his anytime touchdown, but the over 251.5 yards, I wouldn't be surprised if that cashes, sweat free. And again, we're going back to Zay Flowers on the over 48.5 yards. Now, one more that is through Prize Picks, Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews, and they do give you a combination option there, which obviously doubles your chances, and especially in a team that is so offensively condensed, that just makes it even that much better, where we have Zay Flowers and Andrews. Either one of them can score anytime touchdown, and we're going to pair that up again, going back to Bijan with the anytime touchdown. The last play here, and this one is actually through a sports book. I specifically got this one on my bookie, but you can look around for it. I'm sure it's elsewhere. Anytime touchdown again for Zay Flowers, but also the money line for the Ravens to win. Now, that right there is going to pay out at plus 200, or I believe plus 210. So I really, really love that. If I had to pick one play, if you're like, man, I only got $10, I'm going to have one prop and that's it. That's my play for you, because I do believe those two are very, very highly correlated. If Zay Flowers gets in the end zone, I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably not the only touchdown they score on the day. But if he gets in the end zone and he's having a hell of a game, the Ravens are winning. And I don't think that there really much doubt about them winning, at least on paper. Obviously, who knows what the hell can go wrong during the game. But if you had to ask me right now, just to take a money line pick, the Ravens are one of my more favorite plays there. I'm going to pair that up with their best receiver, healthiest receiver as well, since Odell Beckham is having that ankle issue, to go out there and score a touchdown. Now, those are all the picks, but let me give you just a little bit of rationale behind these. So we talked again a lot about that Falcons-Lions matchup, and I've had a couple people ask me like, hey, why are you so high on this? What is it that's making you want, take all these different plays on them? It is the defensive sides of the ball. The offenses are both very good. They both want to run the ball. They both have explosive running backs. They both have top 10 offensive lines. Great. Now, defensive-wise, the Lions' front seven is the 27th ranked defensive line. Their secondary is the 24th ranked secondary. So if you are the Falcons and you want to run the ball and you're committed to running the ball, you can do it. The front seven is not going to put up much of any, or if any, resistance to the running the ball on them. And the perfect play with that is obviously Bijan, right? You have your most explosive running back, your top 10 badass offensive line going up against this defensive line that is willing to get pushed around and okay with it. We saw this very similar thing last Thursday when the Eagles played against the Vikings, and the Vikings and their bottom 5 ranked defensive line had the same exact issue. Now, what happened in that game? We all saw DeAndre Swift go fucking nuts. He scored 2 touchdowns. Bijan, he may not have a crazy game like that, but I fully expect him to reach around 100 plus yards and at least one touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more than one touchdown. On the flip side, when the Lions have the ball, the Falcons, their front seven, their defensive line is ranked 28th. They're literally the very next worst team, or the team that's, the 28th ranked team. That's the fourth worst defensive line. The Lions have the fifth ranked or fifth worst defensive line. So the front sevens we expect them to be shit. And the Lions have a top 10 rated offensive line. So again, exactly what I just said for the Falcons and Bijan. Just replace the word Bijan with Gibbs and Falcons with Lions. And that's the same shit. We are expecting the Lions offensive line to come out here to dominate, to open up lanes, to have a big explosive plays for Gibbs, and give Goff time in the pocket if and when he wants it. So I believe that Lions offense is going to be humming just fine. As far as the Falcons secondary is ranked 26th. So again, bottom 10 secondary in the NFL. So even though that they can't cover and they can't pressure, it didn't help them in the secondary any. They're not dropping more people back. They're just still not good. Now, this number isn't based off of just the 2 weeks that they've played. This number is actually based off my preseason rankings, the unit rankings, position rankings, Warren Sharp's rankings. These defenses are terrible. Those are the reasons I expect that game is going to be a higher scoring game. You're going to see a lot of production, a lot of yards, specifically on the ground, because both of these teams would love to keep the ball away from their quarterback. Now, as far as the Falcons are concerned, they have a pretty decent head coach who has used a lot of pre-snap motion and play action, things like that, to kind of help his quarterback as much as possible. And I expect that you're going to see that come through. Now, as far as the Ravens are concerned, the Colts, their front seven is number 13th. They have, almost a top 13, right? So it's a top third almost defensive line in the NFL. Pretty good, just, above average. It does not make a whole lot of sense for you to try to run into the teeth of that defense. The secondary for the Colts is number 31. They are the second worst secondary in the NFL. Now, we've seen that the Ravens want to pass more. They have not been as run heavy. You have running backs with health issues. J.K. Dobbins obviously out for the season. Justice Hill, he's banged up as well. You have Gus Edwards back there. You got people moving up from the practice squad and stuff like that. You may not want to keep banging those guys against the rocks, especially when you have someone like Zay Flowers, who 2 weeks in a row has connected on a deep bomb. Now, to say that he's going to do that again, I don't think is a huge surprise. I don't think it's a huge stretch, especially against a weaker secondary, especially because the Ravens have, again, a top 10 offensive line going up against, yes, it is a good defensive line, but going up against pretty much anybody, has been able to buy a little bit of time for Lamar, even with the injuries that the offensive line has suffered. And with a guy like Lamar, he's going to scramble at least a little bit to give you a little bit of extra time to get open, get downfield. I expect this Colts secondary to get demolished. I really, really do. I think that they're going to have a great day through the air, specifically Zay Flowers, because he is, for all intent and purposes, he is your downfield threat. Not to say that Bateman can't do it, not to say that Odell can't do it, but they're kind of your secondary breaking case of glass kind of guy, right? Zay Flowers is your young, rookie, fast, quick, can juke, can do whatever the hell you ask him, get down the field, get open. He's proven to you 2 weeks in a row that he can do that. Give me him to over his yardage against a shitty secondary. And you know what? Last week, if you watched the game, after he caught his long pass, they went back to him 3 times in a row trying to get this guy a touchdown, trying to get him his first official NFL touchdown. I think this is the week you see them put at least a little bit of emphasis, maybe not crazy heavy, but at least some emphasis on getting him in the end zone. That team loves him. Lamar loves him. The coaching staff loves him. They want to get him a touchdown. They're going to do whatever they have to scheme him open. And I would not be surprised if they're having a conversation this week about, man, we're going to get you a touchdown this week. They're going to get that monkey off his back. So that's the reasoning. That's the rationale, guys. I hope you agree with a lot of this. I hope that you're following me with a lot of this. In the link below, I am putting in the Prize Picks link if you want to open the account, as well as, of course, the GT Bets link and the MyBookie link. If you want to look into those, they're still giving bonuses to open up their accounts if you don't already have one, to go ahead and shop your books. And you guys have a great day. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything else you see as far as props are concerned, because there's a million of them out there, or anything that you want to say you don't agree with. So thanks again. Y'all have a good day.